What's going on, bottom line viewers? It's Mitch here to discuss who is the NFL MVP this season in 2016. We're 1 week away from the playoffs. A lot of teams are solidifying their place. We already have the AFC locked up with all 6 teams. They're just deciding where they're going to seed. In the NFC, there's a couple teams that may or may not get in. You have the Packers, you have the Lions. But besides all that, let's discuss the biggest award in pro football for basically the regular season. It's a regular season award. It's a regular season individual award. The NFL MVP. This is looked at as one of the best and most prestigious awards in the NFL. And there are quite a few players that are up on the ballot this season for NFL MVP. There are about 4 or 5 quarterbacks that could be discussed as the NFL MVP. There are about a couple running backs that should be discussed in the MVP conversation. So I'm going to go through all the players that I think are in the conversation to win the MVP this season, give you the reasons why they should win the MVP, why they shouldn't win the MVP, and then go from there. I'll give you my opinion on who should win the MVP, and then you guys comment below who should win the MVP. With the arguments I lay out, I'll give you where the league will probably most likely end up going. So let's start off with a quarterback. Probably the more controversial choice on this list, but, you know, it's Tom Brady. Tom Brady, the reason why he's a controversial choice is he's only played 11 games this year. He's going to end up playing 12, maybe 11 and a half games this year. So Tom Brady, this season, just looking at a per-game basis, has probably played the best of any player or any quarterback at any position this year on a per-game basis. Tom Brady's played 11 games, has 3,278 yards, thrown 25 touchdowns, only 2 interceptions, 110.7 passer rating. Now, there are arguments for Tom Brady. There are arguments against Tom Brady. First of all, Tom Brady's team, with him at the helm, has only lost 1 game. And you look at his individual statistics, and they're obviously no slouch in that category for sure. He already has more touchdowns than, one of the candidates on this list for MVP. So in a lot less games, Tom Brady is putting up ridiculous stats. You also look at the fact that the Patriots could be the best team in the league right now. They're one of the favorites to win the Super Bowl, especially in the AFC. So he's clearly the best player on the best team in the AFC. And that's a big determining factor for the MVP ballot for the league. They look at the teams that are the best, and then they basically pick the best players from those teams. So Tom Brady is certainly in the conversation. You could also look at the negative side of things. His team only lost 1 game without him. You know, they won a couple games with Jimmy Garoppolo, who I think is actually a pretty good quarterback and will end up playing somewhere and have some success, I believe. And Jacoby Brissett did win a game against the Houston Texans, a playoff team at home. So you could say that maybe Tom Brady's impact on his team's success because of Bill Belichick and because of how great of a coach he is and the way that he's able to scheme for other players in his system, that it makes it, not as worthy of the most valuable player. But if you're strictly looking at statistics, at wins, at everything else, Tom Brady surely there's a huge difference when Tom Brady is playing for the Patriots instead of Jimmy Garoppolo or Jacoby Brissett. But even if you just look at the stats, Tom Brady has had an awesome year. So let's go to who I think is probably the second most debated guy out there right now, Ezekiell Elliott. Ezekiell Elliott is the running back for the Dallas Cowboys, rookie. And I think the rookie thing kind of has a little bit of a factor to do with this because obviously they could give him the Rookie of the Year award, but they could also give it to one of his teammates. So we'll see. He's played 15 games so far. I don't think he'll play much in the next game, but he has 1,631 yards. He rushes for over 100 yards per game at 108.7 rushing yards per game. He's had 15 touchdowns this season, over 5 yards per carry at 5.1, has 32 receptions, 363 yards, and 1 touchdown. There are pros and cons to the Ezekiell Elliott argument. Last year, the Dallas Cowboys were 4-12. They were not a very good team. They didn't have Tony Romo. They had a running game that was okay. Darren McFadden ran for about, 1,100 yards. And that is Darren McFadden, a running back that a lot of people looked at as over the hill. And he's clearly not as good as Ezekiell Elliott. That has to be said. But he still had success last year with that great offensive line. That is the negative that a lot of people will look at for Zeke, is that anybody could run behind that offensive line. Well, he's still having a fantastic year, and he still makes plays that only a few running backs in the league could make, especially as a rookie. He has great vision, he has great breakaway speed, and he's definitely a huge pro to their offense. I think he is the MVP of the Cowboys, other than that offensive line that they really have. The offensive line, of course, makes their whole offense better because it's multiple players at multiple positions. But if you're looking at one player at one position, I think Zeke has had the biggest impact on the Cowboys' winning ways this season. And he definitely deserves some recognition as an MVP candidate because the top team in the NFC is the Dallas Cowboys. And also, you could look at it because if you're going to give the award to one of the guys on the Cowboys, it's basically like all of the guys on the Cowboys offense kind of won that award. So you could say you can't give the award to the Cowboys offensive line. The closest thing you can do is give it to their running back, and that is Ezekiell Elliott. And he's played very well both in the run game and the passing game. So he definitely deserves the recognition. Now let's go to his teammate, Dak Prescott, who's also been getting a lot of buzz as MVP. I don't really agree with this, though. He's played 15 games, had 3,630 yards, 23 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, 105.6 passer rating. He's had a very good season, especially for a rookie, one of the best of all time for a rookie, has a great touchdown to interception ratio. But then you look at his stats and you compare him to Tom Brady's, you compare the impact on both teams, clearly not the same. I think if you're giving the award to Dak Prescott, you need to give it to Tom Brady because Tom Brady has 25 touchdowns, Dak has 23. Tom Brady has 2 interceptions, Dak has 4 interceptions. Tom Brady has 110.7 passer rating, Dak Prescott has 105.6. Tom Brady has more of an impact on his team. They're more of a pass-oriented team. He has a lot more decisions to make at the line of scrimmage. He's a lot more counted on for his team to win games and make big plays than Dak Prescott. So therefore, I think if you're giving the award to Dak Prescott currently, I'd switch your idea to Tom Brady. But there is an argument to be made for Dak Prescott. Without a quarterback last season, when they had Matt Castle, Brandon Weeden, a bunch of other guys, they went 4-12 in the NFC East. And this year, they're 14-2. They're arguably the best team in the NFL. Without Tony Romo, there's been a guy that's stepped in and played very, very well. And you could say this against Elliott is they had a decent run game last year, and that wasn't the difference between wins and losses. It was their quarterback. So you could lean towards Dak instead of Zeke for that argument. But I just think the MVP needs to have those eye-popping stats. Dak doesn't have those eye-popping stats, so I think he's more of a candidate for Rookie of the Year, depending what happens with Ezekiell Elliott. Matt Stafford. Matt Stafford is a quarterback that has been debated as one of the MVPs of the season. He's played 15 games, 3,980 yards. He's played injured. He's thrown 22 touchdowns, 9 interceptions, 93.1 rating. Now, those stats aren't as impressive even as a Dak Prescott, but you have to take into account that Matt Stafford basically is the Lions. As Stafford plays, the Lions play. And every single win this season for the Lions have basically been a comeback. So that is a huge factor in Matt Stafford. If Matt Stafford was not there in the term of most valuable player, he would be sorely missed because they have come back in every game. Their defense isn't fantastic. Their run game is terrible. Their offensive line isn't very good. It's Matt Stafford that makes their team run, and he's carrying a not very good team to the playoffs. Now, he doesn't have very eye-popping numbers because the players around him aren't the greatest. If he was on the Cowboys, you could argue he would have a fantastic season, but I think he has to make the playoffs to be in the conversation. I think you have to look at his comeback victories in that conversation. But again, I think Matt Stafford's numbers don't quite match some of the other quarterbacks that are in this argument. Let's go to Derek Carr. Now, Derek Carr is injured, which I think does take him kind of out of contention right now. But I had him as the midseason MVP. I think he was the best at the midway point. I made a video on that. I stand by that Derek Carr was the best player halfway through the season. He's had a couple lackluster games. Kansas City has been one of them. But 15 games, 3,933 yards. He's fought through injury just like Matt Stafford. 28 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, 96.7 passer rating. So he's probably had a better season than Matt Stafford. You also compare the fact that they've both had great comeback victories. That's been awesome for Derek Carr. And you just bring into the fact that the Oakland Raiders were terrible before Derek Carr was under center. And he was the guy to really get the ball rolling for the franchise, for the offense, for the entire team, and give them an identity. He's made them arguably a contender in the playoffs, but since he's went out, you can't really argue that anymore, and that might be a pro to his argument that without Derek Carr, the Oakland Raiders are no longer a contender to challenge for the Super Bowl. They're no longer a playoff team, really. And with Matt McGloin under center, they're not really that good of a team. And with Derek Carr, they are. So that is an argument for Derek Carr. He was in the conversation for a very long time, and they could still put him in that conversation today. But again, there are a couple other quarterbacks that have had a little bit of better numbers, a little bit more consistent. But Derek Carr has made just about as big of an impact as you possibly can. One of those quarterbacks that's had huge numbers. Aaron Rodgers, 15 games, 4,128 yards, 36 touchdowns, 7 interceptions, 102.7 passer rating. Now, I think that Aaron Rodgers and his team, the Packers, need to make the playoffs to be considered in this conversation. He didn't play very well at the beginning of the year by Aaron Rodgers standards, and you could be looking at, hey, this guy didn't play his best all year. It's not the most consistent we've seen of Aaron Rodgers. That could be made. That argument could be made. But he's took a very bad team, in my opinion, and raised them to a contender. A team that people are talking about as a dark horse going into the playoffs. I think very well you should put Aaron Rodgers in this conversation. Look at his stats. They're very eye-popping to me. They're going to be playing next week, so he'll even add to those statistics. So Aaron Rodgers, I think, is definitely in the conversation. I think he's right up there amongst Tom Brady, Ezekiell Elliott, in the conversation, especially if you're looking at the award as most valuable player. You take Aaron Rodgers away from the Packers, and they're probably something like the Colts. So, the Packers are definitely, they've struggled this year, and I think you could also attribute Aaron Rodgers' success to the rise of Jordy Nelson. You could say that Rodgers is the reason why Nelson is playing better, but you could argue that Jordy Nelson, since he's become more healthy, the offense has continued to roll, and Aaron Rodgers has also fought through injury, so he definitely deserves consideration. Matt Ryan, 15 games, 4,613 yards, 34 touchdowns, 7 interceptions, 115.5 passer rating. I think Matt Ryan has the statistics to back up the argument to be MVP. He's on the number one offense in the NFL. He needs the bye in the playoffs, I think, to probably win this award, considering Ezekiell Elliott is probably ahead of him in the race. But they're going to have minimum 10 wins, probably 11. This is the best season of his career. They have the best offense in the league. And why is that? Matt Ryan, they have a great offensive scheme there. They have Julio Jones, a couple running backs that are pretty great. Offensive line is very much improved. But Matt Ryan, with those players around him, has really been in the driver's seat for this team's success, and they don't really have a great defense, so that could be argued in Matt Ryan's favor. But that passer rating is best in the league. Touchdown interception ratio is amongst the best. The passing yards is definitely up there. He's in second right now behind Drew Brees, so you could argue Matt Ryan is the MVP of the league, especially because that offense is number one. Then let's get to a couple running backs that I feel need consideration, and I would almost vote for MVP. Leveon Bell, 12 games, 1,268 yards, 4.9 yards per carry, 7 touchdowns on the ground. Now you look at his receiving. He has 75 receptions on the season in 12 games, 616 yards receiving, and 2 touchdowns receiving. Then he has the average most yards per game, which is the best since Priest Holmes in 2004. That's pretty impressive. He's the driving force on a contending team in the AFC. Without Leveon Bell, you could argue the Steelers aren't a playoff team right now. They probably would have lost to the Ravens. They have a significant impact. This guy has such a big impact in the passing game, in the running game. this guy gets 40 touches a game. You know, he is the Pittsburgh offense. As much as you want to give credit to Antonio Brown as arguably the best receiver, they've changed. They've changed their offensive philosophy, and it's Leveon Bell first. It's run game first, and that is the reason why the Steelers' offense is so effective. So you got to give a lot of credit to Leveon Bell, and he's in the conversation as well. David Johnson is not going to win the award, but if he was on a good team, I think he would have. Listen to these statistics. 15 games, 1,233 yards, 4.3 yards per carry, 16 rushing touchdowns, 77 receptions for 841 yards, and 4 touchdowns. So he has 20 touchdowns and he has 2,000 yards. That is pretty damn impressive. That's in 15 games. He's played the entire season. He hasn't been suspended. He's got 2,000 all-purpose yards. He has a significant impact in the passing and the running games. He is the Cardinals' offense, but he probably won't be picked because the Cardinals did not make the playoffs, and that sucks because I would vote for David Johnson right now. I'll tell you right now, I would vote for David Johnson to be MVP because he is the most valuable player. He's had the biggest impact on his team this season. He's been absolutely fantastic in both the run games and the receiving games, but because he has not made the playoffs, he's not going to win the award, and that's kind of sad. Leveon Bell, I think, back to him, I think the suspension hurts, and I think him not playing the full season hurts, but if he did, you look at the impact that he's made during that time, and he's arguably been better than Ezekiell Elliott this season. Matt Ryan and Aaron Rodgers are great. Tom Brady is great. It's very, very difficult for the MVP this season, guys. If I had to choose, I would say that Tom Brady would be eliminated because he was suspended and he didn't play all the games. And I think that he needed to go basically undefeated and almost flawless to win this award. I just don't think the NFL is going to hand him the award, despite what a lot of people are saying. And I am a Patriots fan, and I'm saying Tom Brady won't win the award. I think that the award is most likely going to go to Ezekiell Elliott, who's had 1,600 rushing yards, over 100 a game, 15 touchdowns, leading the league in rushing yards by quite a bit, 5.1 yards per carry. He's played excellent all year long. The Dallas Cowboys are one of the best teams in the league. They have a bye. It just makes perfect sense to me that Ezekiell Elliott would win it, despite being a rookie. You'd probably give then the Rookie of the Year to Dak Prescott. I think Matt Stafford has kind of had an on and off second half of the year, and they might not even make the playoffs, which means he's probably not going to win the award. Derek Carr is injured, which means he's probably not going to win the award. Aaron Rodgers had an inconsistent first half of the season, so he's probably not going to win the award despite having huge statistics. Matt Ryan is underrated, but not a lot of people look at him as maybe an MVP candidate. They look at Julio Jones first or Freeman and Coleman first before they even look at Matt Ryan, so he's probably out of the conversation. I think it's between Tom Brady, Ezekiell Elliott, and maybe Matt Ryan. And I think you have to go with Ezekiell Elliott. He's played the full season, and the Cowboys have been excellent. Plus, if you give the award to Zeke, you give the award to Cowboys offensive line, and in a way, Dak Prescott. So my choice would probably be who I think they're going to pick is Ezekiell Elliott. My choice would probably be between Leveon Bell or David Johnson. I know it's kind of crazy that the third best running back in the league is going to win the MVP, but that's just my opinion, guys. Let me know what your opinion is in the comments section below. Thanks, guys, for watching and sticking through this entire video. Good luck to your teams in the playoffs if you made it. And if not, get ready for the draft. We'll have coverage on the draft on this channel. So thank you guys for watching. It's Mitch of the Bottom Line View. For more NFL content, subscribe to the channel and like the video. Peace out.